Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to our Platform Analytics Academy session here on April 20th. We have a really good one that we have here for everyone. So real quick, just as usual, I want to kind of go over some quick logistical information, and then we'll get directly into our session so we can give Dan as much time as possible on it. So again, these are always for you. So we try as hard as we can to bring some fresh ideas and better understanding and practical guidance around things all related to platform analytics. This will be recorded as usual. It will be out on the community page. Also, it'll be out on YouTube. That'll happen a little bit later on today. And of course, you use the Q&A to ask questions. Feel free to ask those. Please use the Q&A, not to chat if possible. Not only will we have Dan who will be presenting, we have panelists on as well that will be monitoring that. And if we can answer questions while the presentation is going on, we'll do that. And if there is a question that comes up that is relevant to where we are in the presentation, we may stop the presenter and actually ask that question then to make sure that it stays relevant for that. Again, my name is Thomas Davis. I am the host, and we have Dan Kane, who's going to present today. And we also have Tara Romero on as well, and she'll be a panelist, so she'll help me answer questions while Dan is presenting. And then, of course, if we have time at the end and we're able to get to other questions, maybe not necessarily related to the topic of today, then all three of us will do as much as we can to get on those. So again, we have a really good one today. So this is talking about external data in platform analytics. And Dan, if you are ready, you can take over sharing. And
good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as Thomas said. Today we're going to be having a discussion around the usage of external data within the platform, in platform analytics. This is definitely looking for some thoughts and some questions and some feedback that you might have in the process here. Because this one really is more of a discussion. This is a topic area that's actually come up frequently with customers that I've talked with on a one-on-one basis in the last couple of months. So I figured it would be a good time to maybe to have some discussion around when you would use some of the different options for external data within the platform. As a reminder, I don't know that we may get into some forward-looking statements, but just a reminder that any forward-looking statements, anything that talks about future releases, you should not make any decisions based upon that. And product features can and do change between now and when the actual release goes out. Okay, our agenda for this session today, we're going to look at when to use external data from a general sense, from a general platform sense. We'll take a look at a few of the different external data types, so the ways you can do it. Because you can use manual and automated indicators within performance analytics. You can use external indicators also within performance analytics. We'll also be talking about working with imported data. Things like if you have just a straight import set or integration hub, or just some way that you're actually bringing the data into the platform. We'll also talk a little bit about remote tables and the use in the reporting context. And I know there was actually a session in one of the last couple of Academy. There was a question in one of the last couple of sessions about combining data. If you want to have a chart or a graph where you want to combine your external data within platform. Important to note that this is not a how-to on creating or importing external data sources. That's something that's really outside the scope of PA. So our assumption going in for each one of these different data sources is that your data source has already been created for you, either manually in PA by you or a PA admin, or by one of your sysadmins with the imported data or remote tables. So that's just a heads up on that. It's not a real technical deep dive. Certainly feel free to ask questions, but we will see. We'll do what we can to try to answer them. And then also we'll talk about the community as we wrap up. One of the first questions that comes up is, when should we use external data? I put it in quote marks. Platform analytics is not BI. If you've been a customer of ours for any period of time, you have probably heard this more times than you would like to. than you would care to admit. But there's a reason for it. So when we say platform analytics is not BI, what we say is really when we're talking about external data, we want to keep in mind that ServiceNow is first and foremost, it's a workflow management platform. So platform analytics exists to manage and improve those workflows. So when you bring in, so we're not trying to replicate BI or data warehouse tools. You want to incorporate external data that directly supports components of the workflows. So I think of it as we want just enough data from external sources so that we can improve and optimize these platform workflows. So, then give a couple of examples here. Financial data associated with the cost of CIs, not all financial transactions, just maybe the aggregates. Bidirectional JIRA integration. That's the JIRA example doesn't have to be an incident necessarily, but the idea is the example of you can track development bugs in JIRA as incidents in ServiceNow. That's what we kind of one example we mean by external data. But I'm not bringing in the entire JIRA record into ServiceNow. I'm bringing in just what's necessary into an incident or into a table accompanying the incident so that I can do appropriate reporting on it. So so we're not the data warehouse. So I want to just is a quick slide just to look at these from a high level, these different external options that I mentioned, and some of the considerations, and then we'll go into these considerations in more detail for each of these. So the easiest, obviously, is a manual indicator. All it requires is a PA contributor role, which the PA power user has automatically and PA admin has automatically. But the manual indicator just requires a PA contributor. One of the questions is, can we drill down to underlying records? What is the level of difficulty or level of time investment in the implementation, and whether there are automated score updates. So with the manual indicators, you just need a PA contributor. There is no drill down to underlying records. So when I have a score in Analytics Hub, that's as far as I can go. I can apply breakdowns with manual indicators, but I can't do drill downs into the underlying records. It's very, very easy to implement. And scores are not automatically updated. So there's no job to run a refresh on a manual indicator. Automated indicators, you're probably a little more familiar with in just the creation of them, but we can use automated indicators to store external data. And I'll talk about the use case of why you might do that in just a couple of minutes, but I just want to just mention that as an option. When you'll notice that for this one, I say the drill down to underlying records is no. And this will make more sense when we talk about it, but what this is really is you're just using the automated indicator scorecard to hold your scores in, and then you might later use an actual automated indicator where you're collecting the scores automatically within the same one. So it's easy to monitor. It's still fairly simple, but there are a couple of very specific considerations to take in mind. And I do have a note on the automated score updates, because you can convert an automated indicator to start collecting scores automatically through scheduled jobs. You could use the same indicator for manual entry within that automated indicator record, and then later switch it to an indicator source and scheduled job that captures that data automatically through your collection jobs. External indicators is a function that I call it complex, and I'd say it kind of depends upon your level of SQL understanding. The external indicator is where I am just going out to an external data source, and all I'm pulling back is the score. So, for example, if I'm going out to a call center system and I want to get the average hold time from the call center system for a given month, the external indicator would be going out and grabbing that, running the query to get the data and then coming up with a score. All the calculation would still be done in that external system, or within the query that you write within the external indicator setup. We'll show you an example of that.
Hey, Dan, real quick, just a quick question came in, just a confirmation. So are you saying we can create automated indicators from external data?
Yes, where that scenario comes, that's a really good question. Where that scenario comes into play is I actually had talked with a customer about something like this not that long ago, where they had survey data. Eventually they were going to have the surveys being calculated, using the survey functionality in the platform. But for the first several months of using the platform, they weren't. They had another means of capturing surveys. So what we suggested for them in that scenario was, go ahead and set up your automated indicator for when the surveys will be using ServiceNow data. But so once that automated indicator is set up, I can still enter in the scores from the first couple of months when it's from an external system. I can still enter in the scores in an automated indicator scorecard. And again, I'll show you examples of that and exactly what that would look like. Because there are use cases where it could be handy. Yep.
But can you create an automated indicator off of external data? So if we're pulling from external data, it would have to be put into a system table in order for us to create an automated indicator. Okay, correct. That's what I wanted to confirm. Okay.
That's a good clarification. The external indicator is the closest we get to that, because that is an automated update. So that's the way that we go and get external data as scores automatically pulled. So my example was like, my phone system data that has my hold times and abandon times. I would run a query against the external database that holds my phone system data. The return would be the score. And I set up that external indicator exactly as if it is exactly as if it's an automated indicator. So I would actually put that into a scheduled collection job, the same way I would put an automated indicator in a collection job. So, and again, we'll get into some of that and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. So does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you, Dan.
Good clarification there, Tara. Table imports is probably the one that we're going to be most familiar with using external data. And that could be through Integration Hub. It could be through just an import set that you're running in manually, but you're bringing it. So you're actually populating a table in the platform that contains the data. That's what we're talking about in this scenario. You're populating it, usually a custom table in this scenario. You're populating a custom table that's pulling in data directly from some sort of external source. So now you do have the source records. So when I talk about the drill down to underlying records, yeah, you do have that. You do have that available to you. And I call this one moderate to complex because it does require, you do need your sysadmin to set up that external import, whether through Integration Hub or manually. So that's what it is, can be fairly complex for that. But the PA side of it is actually pretty simple, to be honest. The PA side of that, because it's just as if it's a regular table. You set up an indicator the same exact way. It's an automated indicator. In this case, so kind of what Tara was saying. It's an automated indicator against an imported table. So against a custom table. Then the last
quick, I'm sorry. Yep. And would the customer be charged for the new table?
It all depends. So if it is a custom table that is within, so yes, it can. Yeah, in most cases it will be, or it will go against however your license is configured. So, for example, many of like the pro SKUs might include a certain number of custom tables within. If you have ITSM Pro, it may include a certain number of custom tables within the ITSM context. If that data being imported is for use within the ITSM context, it just counts as one of your allowed custom tables. If it is a completely new table that is not associated with any of your licensed ITS, any of your licensed PA products or your the pro SKUs or anything of that sort, than it would be on an individual basis. Than it would be charged. So that is a consideration, absolutely.
Thanks, Dan.
The last one I mentioned was remote tables. This one is really cool for a very specific use case. What this is this actually loads your data in memory. It actually loads your table. It runs a query against some sort of external data source and just loads the records in memory. But it's just for reports, and it's up to 1,000 records. So it's only temporarily in memory. It can be fairly complex to set up, but a scenario that I've seen is things like weather reporting. If you wanted to, if you want on your dashboard, if you wanted to include up-to-date weather information in a widget on your dashboard, a remote table could be a really cool way to address that. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that too here as we go. But it's limited amounts of data, small data sets. And the data never exists in a table in the platform, and is not available for PA. Okay, so to get into some of these specifics here, I mentioned manual indicators because, as I say, sometimes simple is best. Don't assume that a manual indicator is always a bad option. There are definitely scenarios where where you don't have the time or the resources to set up a complex integration, when all I need is just minimal data. So if I go back to my call center example, might be, and this is an example here that I have on the screen. It might, in this case, it's just capturing the number of abandoned calls for the call center, and then with a breakdown for each of my 3 call centers within my organization. So a call center for Birmingham, for Hyderabad, and for Raleigh. That's kind of what this is saying here. So I just enter in a total score and the total score for the indicator, and then the score for each of the individual breakdowns. This is really useful when you don't need a lot of data slices, a lot of detailed data slices. So it's very simple data, and you can add, as I mentioned, you can add the simple breakdowns. This is creating a manual indicator, and usually they're going to be, and usually I wouldn't do these on a daily basis. It's usually a more of a larger time series aggregation, but there are scenarios. I mean, I have had some customers where they do actually have somebody enter in things like basic call center info manually into a manual indicator, just because they don't have the means to get their integration set up with their call center system. So don't just bypass this and assume it's not a worthy option. It can be very helpful. So automated indicators. So this is a little bit more of, that discussion we just had a couple of minutes ago, but I want to mention this. So within an automated indicator, and I'm going to switch over to my instance here, I can have an automated indicator that captures, here, I was thinking I was going to do something like, I think I was doing a couple of test ones here. I can have my, and I'm, if I go into an automated indicator, I can enter my scores. Now, this is both a good and a bad thing. Think of it this way, because it can be dangerous too. I have the option from an automated indicator. I always have the option to click on the scores for this indicator. Normally, we talk about that as a way just to verify whether or not scores are being collected correctly. But another use case is where I certainly can just enter in scores manually on my own, and there's no reason why that you can't do that. But that's with a big caveat, because this also allows you to manually overwrite automatically collected scores, and that is bad. That we definitely do not want to do. But there is a use case where it's, and as I mentioned, that one example. Another example I had is where a customer was going to be doing some work with vendor management, and they had some vendor management scores that were going to be in the platform 6 months from now. but they had some scores now, but they're still collecting those scores outside of the platform. So we direct them on using an automated indicator to enter in the scores manually now, and then eventually it would be changed to set it up as for the automated collection. So what you need to do with this, so I mentioned that the scores for this indicator related link, enter scores manually until the necessary data exists. So once the data is available, so once this customer does have the ability to get their vendor management scores collected automatically as in the automated indicators, then I would add this automated indicator to a collection job. So until that time, I would leave it out of a collection job, or I could set it to false in the active on the collection job. So I would, that way it's not going to try to collect a score. So yeah, this is my indicator there too. So a note on using an automated indicator, and this is probably the most important part of it. To use an automated indicator, you must know what the indicator source will be up front. So say this kind of a different way. With my vendor management scores, with my vendor scores I had, I want to make sure that the automated indicator is using an indicator source that will not change, even if it's not going to be until 6 months that we start using it. The reason for that is because whenever you want to modify the indicator definition or the indicator source, what will it tell you if scores already exist? Say, nope, you can't do that. Scores already exist. So it says the only way you can do that is if you deleted all the scores. So this is a very, very specific use case. You really do need to know what that indicator source will be. In some cases, it might even be months before you even start collecting it in an automated manner. So for this particular customer, they were going to use an out-of-the-box vendor management score. So that automated indicator was already set up for them. The indicator source was already set up for them. They knew they were going to set up the data to utilize that. So then it worked for them to be able to enter in the first few months of scores manually. Good. So yes, an automated indicator can be used. External indicators. This is one that's probably less known about. It can be a really useful tool. So what this is, and I'm going to show you in the platform here too. For an external indicator, you'll notice that within performance analytics, you have the option. You do have an external data options here for external indicators and external breakdowns. So I could set up an external indicator. What this is doing is to set this up, what I'm doing, and notice it looks a lot like a regular indicator. You notice it's even the indicator form, it's just using a different view of that form. It's just using the external view of that form. So I set it up just like I would a regular automated indicator. The big difference then is in the source. So instead of using an indicator source, I need to have a data source set up by my system admin, and it has to be a JDBC data source. It must be JDBC, and it can come from MySQL, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, or Oracle, as long as it's a JDBC data, as long as the data source is set up to use JDBC. So, and you'll notice out of the box, there's probably a bunch of existing ones that exist, but they're not all JDBC connections. So some of them are just file attachments, and some of them are ODBC connections. And so what I do is I basically tell it. So I set up the connection. So this would give me the data source connection would give me all of my credentials, the location of the external data, all that sort of information. And then my SQL statement says, what do I want to do once I connect to that external data source? And again, you'll note that I'm going to stress this. I can't stress this enough. This is not bringing back records. This is not bringing back records with an external indicator. It is just bringing back a score, an aggregate score based upon the results of your query. So that's why I did mine. So this is like a select count from incident where, and now in this case, there's a table called incident in my external data source. And then I put in, and then I can put in I can use, so in this case, there's a date that's created that's used by my external system. But then I also am telling it to use as the variable. So where the created date is equal to the start at, this is a variable for the collection job. So for example, it's a variable you can use in any collection job. You can use it in scripts as well. So some of our out-of-the-box scripts use this, where you can put in a variable date. So like when I'm collecting, actually, I'll go an example of one of these here. A bunch of duration ones here, yeah. So, but there's most of these will do. This one should have it. You notice this, so this particular indicator, this is not an external one, this is an internal one, but it has a script. That script, if I open up that script, has a call to not only the, oh, this is the current, it shows a bad example. It's going to use like the how long it's been, how long an open item has been, how long an incident, like open incidents have been. Let's see. Summed age of last update. That's probably a good one. No, actually, that'll just use the updated one. No, it will. It will. There we go. So this is using an example of one of those, a automatic term to use in scripts and queries for performance analytics. This one's score end. It'd be the same as this, as the start at. So the start at is the beginning of my collection job. So if I work with my job, so I have a new job and I'm just going to say Academy, as if I can spell. Save it. Yeah, it was Academy example. That was the one. It was the one I used. So then I add in when I add in the Academy example, what that SQL statement is going to do on my indicator is it's going to use that start at as the variable, and it's going to be looking at the start at from the job itself. So when I set up the job parameters, so the relative start, relative end. So normally for a daily collection job, this would be one day ago or just be yesterday. So it would automatically be looking at yesterday's, but you could do a historical collection the same way. I could look back a certain number of days, but whatever the start at date was, that's what I set up in my query for the external indicator. But I collect it the same way I do an automated indicator. I'm going to switch back to, so as I mentioned, what we use this for, all you need is aggregate scores from an external data source. So the drill down to the individual records are not needed. capture and store KPI scores via an admin defined data source. Scores are collected and stored exactly as automated indicators, but there are no snapshots, no detailed records. So one example I've had it come up here recently was some aggregate scores on days to hire, or the process, days that within my HR system. If I'm not using ServiceNow for my HR and I'm using an external system, I might have my externals. I might get a calculation of how long what is the average amount of time between a first contact and an interview or something like that. I could put that in here, but it's pulling that data based upon a written SQL statement. And I do have and we do have to define the score time period. I have a docs link here as well that's available to you. Question: can we collect the data monthly and quarterly? How do we change the code in that case? That would be based upon that would really be based upon no, it's a good question. Actually, I think that's going to be based upon the data in your source table and how you set up the collection job. So if I could set up the collection job to be more of a once a month collection, I could do it where it'd be where I change this to where my date is between start at and then plus 30 days. So you could do it. There's some work. It'd be workarounds to get it, but there is not. I think the question really is there an audit? Is there an automated function that's already built in to give me the equivalent of a single start at date? No, there isn't. But you could do some workarounds within the SQL statement itself. So that's a really good question. All right, importing data. So this is where we're talking about, this is a little more fully featured. Very commonly, we're talking about Integration Hub. And this does require, Integration Hub does have separate licensing. So, but what in the use case here is I need to access specific records that make up a score from an external data source. So similar to the external indicator, except in this scenario, I do need the drill down records. I need the detailed records that underlie the score. So it's using standard Integration Hub functionality. What you're doing that's one scenario. You're just bringing source records into ServiceNow platform tables. And in this case, it's using PA against this table, just like any other platform table. Usually they are custom tables. So it's, let's see, so the PA or reports itself, it really is just a consumer of the records brought into the platform via a manual import or through Integration Hub. So plan data integrations carefully. Remember that going back to the whole discussion of this is not a data warehouse, so we don't want to pull in every record from your call center system into this. Your performance isn't going to be great, and you're going to be taking up a lot of database space if you're bringing up every single record, if you're from a call center or something like that. So plan carefully. Okay, so I'm going to look at an example. I do have an example here. I have a table that's I can never remember exactly what I called it, so I'm going to get to it manually. Very simple table that I just called demo request here. And this is sysadmin functionality to look at the schema map, so this is just a table as it was created. So I had to create a table, and it's a custom table. Now, normally these would be scoped. I always have to put in that disclaimer. Normally these would be scoped tables. My example, to stay simple, they're not scoped. Just to keep it simple here, but it's a custom table, so it does require custom table licensing. And I define all the fields that are going to be brought in by defining all the fields that are going to be brought in by my import. Some of these are system generated and like, so then when I actually, in this case, it's a very simple table. So I have a small table that is based upon some requests that came in from an external system. And, just very basic information just to give you kind of the sense of how this would work. But what I can do then is I can make an indicator or a report based upon, I can't remember if I did this one. Yeah, I don't think I did this one, my demo, but where that demo request table is my indicator source. I think in this instance, I don't think I did that. Nope. Okay. But I can make it where but it's the same basic functionality as any other table. I do want to mention one other licensing factor, and that is that if PA is not enterprise, if PA is if it's licensed with your individual like pro SKU, so you have PA for ITSM like an ITSM Pro license or a CSM Pro license, you are licensed to run PA and collect scores for PA against any table that's affiliated with the CSM or with ITSM. If this imported table, if it's part of that scope, if it's part of the scope, or if it's used within the CSM context, then you absolutely can collect PA scores against it. It's only if that custom table has absolutely nothing to do with your licensed products. So if it's if it's a custom table, I can't think of an example of that where where I'm just bringing in employee birthdays and I don't have HR service delivery. I'm not doing HR Pro. That would be a completely separate table. That would not be covered by your PA license because it's not related to any of your existing PA products.
Hey, Dan,
yeah.
question did come in. It said, if it's a scope table with delegated development, is it safe to assume that the administrator role is no longer a requirement to then be able to create the external indicator?
That's correct. You can create an external indicator with just a PA power user.
Okay, great.
So that's with all sorts of those, with great power comes great responsibility. I always have to say for that. But my point here is I'm just using this table just as if it's a regular fax table for my imported data. There's nothing special about it. As long as the data exists. That's all we care about, is that the data has to exist. It has to exist within the platform. Okay. So a couple of good questions in here. I mentioned that's also maybe a little sales demo for the ServiceNow store has a lot of spokes that your admins probably know about. If you're an admin, you probably know about it, but the integration hub has lots of spokes available in it. I just put one example of it here. A spoke is a pre-written integration into a third-party data source. And we have a bunch. We do have a bunch of them. So this just gives what's required to get it set up. What are the different actions you can do within it? The spoke is not specifically for reporting or PA purposes. It's just to bring the data in. So it's a great shortcut for getting data from external sources. There is a listing in the docs about all the different spokes that are available. So these are spokes that are already written for you. GitHub, Google Cloud, Google Calendar. I mentioned Jira, various Azure. So lots of different spokes. Rally, that's the one I know I've heard some customers use. Saba. So there's lots of data sources that are lots of integrations that are, I won't say it's all configured for you, but it's a shortcut to getting them configured.
And Dan,
can you click on the Jira one so we can see that? We had a question about the Jira one. So
yeah, that's here. Actually, what I should do is just go back. There's actually a couple of different Jira ones available. This one is specifically to Jira Service Management, but that doesn't mean you have to use it for, so manage request, incident, problem, change. There was the other Jira Spoke. It's a really good question here. For issues, users, stories, this will be more of like retrieve Jira data to use in a flow. Use bidirectional webhooks, subscribe. So there's nothing that says specifically it has to work with just with request management or incident management tables. This is, so I might have like.
I think that answers the question because it looks like it was for everything that was task related.
Task driven, but it doesn't have to be specifically to like incidents.
Right.
Yep. Good question. Very good question. The other piece about, the other neat, with integrations is, you can actually do a lot of, this is where you're getting into a lot of you could actually create flows based upon what you want to do with the integration. So the integration comes in from Jira and automatically creates a story for you in ServiceNow, for example. So you can create automations that would you can create flows in Flow Designer that would actually that would automate tasks within ServiceNow, outside of PA and outside of reporting, but just be aware of that. Okay, other questions here. Importing data.
Can you put the link to the spoke list in chat?
Yes. Now this is the San Diego. So just to be aware of that, I'm going to say to everyone. But you can, if you don't have San Diego yet, which I imagine very few of you do, you can just select, if you're not familiar with this with the docs, you can just select the version that you're on. Plus each of the spoke listings tells you which releases it's compatible with. Now, in this case, since I'm just looking at the Rome one, it's not including San Diego. That's why I like to use the San Diego version of it. Because hopefully there's not too many customers that are further back than Quebec or Paris that are on the call here. That's a very good question there. So hopefully I just got some of your sysadmins in trouble by opening up a world that you may have not known about before that they do. So now you're going to come to them and pester them for integrations. That's what we want. That's what we want to see. So no, that's not my job. I just want to help you with the reporting. So another option here, another scenario, and I talk about remote tables really only briefly. A remote table is for reporting only, and this is the option I mentioned at the very beginning. The data is in memory only. It's in memory only and nothing else. So let's do my pen here. So that's no actual data table. Now you actually, when you set up a remote table, you create a table as if you are creating a system table. And I can show you an example of that.
Hey, Dan, just real quick from a time check perspective, we're at 12:45.
Yeah, so I'm just about done.
Okay.
So I just have, like, I had a demo one where I actually do have to set up a table definition and just call it, say it's a remote table and it's identified as a remote table. But what just sits in memory. It's very limited. It's only up to 1,000 records, small data sets that update frequently. So like weather information or something like that. The last item I wanted to talk about briefly, because this was a question that came up a couple of sessions ago about the combination. And so, yes, you can combine in this case. So instead of using that scenario where I mentioned you use an automated indicator to both enter in your manual scores and automatically collects your scores later. That's one scenario. This is probably a more common one where I'm going to eventually have my automated indicator that's being captured in the system. Number of satisfied customers, CSAT, that's one of my out of the box ones. But at the same time, before I have this available to me, maybe I'm not doing the surveys in ServiceNow yet, I'm going to use a manual indicator to start capturing that data. So what I'm doing here is, now in this case, my manual indicator is set up to collect it monthly. I probably should have put that on here just to make it clearer. It's because you notice that within my automated indicator, I'm saying now by month sum plus. So I want to show you very quickly how I did this, how this one is set up. More importantly, for my manual indicator, my number of satisfied customers manual. To make this work, when I entered in my scores for this indicator, you notice I put in a couple of months manually here. And then note my example here, in November, there's a switch. The first couple of days of November, we're still using the old survey system. And then starting a couple of days into November, we're switching over to ServiceNow tracking it. So I have an automated indicator. So I have a number for November for the manual, but then I also have to include a number for the manual for the subsequent months that are going to be automatically collected. The reason for that is you'll get an error that says it'll consider it an incompatible data format to do the formula together. So I would need to keep adding in this 0 on my monthly value. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. So yes, it is possible. Oh yeah, I'll show my example here. So we had some questions, just a few questions along the way, but any other questions either on this topic or just in, I think, in my contact information can go here. It can go, any other questions you might have outside of this topic as well. Thomas, I don't know if we want to, any kind of wrap up here. That I'm not seeing any additional questions coming in. Any other questions that are related to any other PA and reporting topic outside of the external data?
Yeah, we don't have any right yet, but let me bring this up to see. So if there aren't any other questions related to the topic, I mean, we do have a little bit of time here. So is this recording sent? Well, it will be out in the community event for this particular session, and it will, of course, be on our YouTube channel as well. So that will be updated here in a little bit.
Yeah, Brad's typing in a question here right now. So he just
okay.
Giving us the heads up to wait for him.
Yeah, let's see what Brad has.
Looks like there's a couple of questions in the chat. So they're asking us not to hang up yet.
Okay.
We won't.
If you do have questions, let's try to put them into the Q&A so if they can be
John does have us. Haven Straight. Yeah, if you could put your question in there in the Q&A, that would be great.
How do I do stacked columns in PA? So you know what? There might be a good docs.
I think there is a good docs, but I'm also thinking of where I've got some. I want to say the out-of-the-box incident management one has an example of that. It does, but it's but the example of my data in my instance is bad. But I can still.
I found one here, so I don't know what instance that you're in, Brad, but I'll just go ahead and grab it for you for Rome and paste this in here for you. There is the docs that'll actually show you how to do that. So you can create a stack column visualization for like a time series widget or whatnot in Performance Analytics. And you can actually use breakdowns on that as well if you choose to. So
I can show this real quick here too. Just say, like, I've got an example. Mine's they said the data behind it is bad, but this particular widget is a stacked column widget. But just to give you a sense of what I mean, so the setup for it is, I have my indicator. The stacks are based upon a breakdown, so I have to specify a breakdown I'm putting it on. So it's a breakdown type, stacked column type, and that's all I really need to do for it.
All right, and John, there is an ability to actually format those data labels. Let me try to get the doc for that as well. Unless Tara, Dan, you know it off the top of your head. That's one of those things I know it's possible, but I always have to look it up.
These values do not have commas.
It wants to format it so it actually looks more like a number, an actual value number.
Oh. It's actually easier to do in reports now. It's the, but I know it's possible. I just don't remember specifically how to get that. Yeah.
For the metric definition, Brad, there's tons of out of the box metrics. I would just take one of those and just replace the fields, because that's just a date diff. So it's not super complicated. So you could do, like incident duration metric definition, and just take that and do a save, insert and stay, and then just switch the fields on that. It's not as complex as it might seem. Hope that helps.
John, I'm still looking for that doc, but if I don't find it before the end of this, I will actually I'll put the link into the this event, so you'll be able to find it there.
Any questions you have, we'd be happy to take this offline and help you out. Did you have your email address up there, Dan?
I did not.
Oh, you want to tell everyone?
Yes.
In chat. And then Dan and I, or Thomas, can help you. Any one of us, we can collaborate together.
There you go. Just put it into the chat. Daniel.Kane@servicenow.com. Looks like I think someone already answered, but I think that was a good question on the new platform. It might be good for others to hear on the new platform for PA. Wonder if you just answer, because I know you answered it there, Tara. But the point is, are you doing the same for reports? So yes, it's a seamless experience.
Yes, yep. It will be a combined experience. So rather than having to go to PA to do one thing and create your indicators and widgets in one place, and then go to reporting and then select your data sources and create your report, it'll just be like, am I going to create an indicator or a new report all in one interface? And it'll just be combined and a little bit cleaner, a little bit more modern functionality wise. That was the answer for that.
Yeah, I just thought that might be useful for others as well. So, we have a couple more that came in here, right?
Yeah, I'm still trying to
values, stacked columns. Yes, so Brad, click Tara's, yep, go ahead and absolutely. And there are the great thing about PA and the PA and reporting is, we've had all these academy sessions. They're all recorded. We have so there is a huge library of a lot of these how-to sessions in the academy. But then there's also, we really put a lot of work into between the docs and the community, and we put a lot of information out there, a lot of the how-do eyes, and you're going to see even more and more over time. So use the community.
Dan, that's a unified PA reporting experience. I believe that it's slated and will be cleanest in Tokyo, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it kind of has to do, I think there might be a couple of different questions there. If we're talking about the new data model.
Not the data model, just the unified.
Unified filters, and that is actually, that's.
No, what we just talked about. The new PA reporting, how we'll have this just go one place, the analytics center. I believe it's slated to be fully complete by Tokyo. Yes. Like as far as that unified experience. So
yes,
there may be little bits and pieces in San Diego, because we're working into making that feature complete, but I believe it won't be feature complete for full usage until Tokyo.
Correct. Yeah, there is some functionality with it. So if you tried to add a data visualization component using UI Builder, you would see within that same data visualization in San Diego, you would see both. You could choose an indicator, you could choose a table. And so they're both a bit, but again, as Tara said, I would really wait until Tokyo to really do that though, because it's the UI Builder is not intended to be the standard user development dashboard locations.
Okay, so we only have a few more minutes, a couple more minutes here. So I want to go ahead and finish this off. If we didn't get to your question, please ask. You can ask the same question in the community or reach out directly. I know that Dan shared his email. I actually shared mine with John, so I'll get the answer with him for him. But if not, ask your question in the community. Not only do we as ServiceNow employees answer questions, but many of the customers that know a great deal of information as well, really good gurus, can answer questions there as well. So with that, just kind of go through a couple of the slides real quick. So speaking of the community, make sure you go to the community, use it. A lot of great information that's there, and ask questions, as many as you can, and actually search inside the community before you ask a question, because something that you're asking may have already been answered. And again, this information will be out on the Platform Analytics Academy community page here in a little bit. And again, it'll also be out on our YouTube page. Make sure that you're utilizing Now Learning, some really great things that are in there. And it does have a new look as well. Go and search for analytics and you'll find plenty of things that have related training to that. There are a couple new actually PA Advanced on Demand courses. So if you've not done that, that's a great thing out there as well, to be able to do that on demand rather than having to be in an actual classroom. And there are some other great academies that are out there: Creator Workflows and Platform Academy, mobile app, and virtual agent. So check those out as well. Really good content from those as well. And in 2 weeks, we'll actually have a whole session that is dedicated to Q&A. So think of questions that you may have. That will be a first come, first serve. So as the questions come into the Q&A, we will answer those, and we will have a panel of people that will be on. So we'll be able to hopefully get a lot of answers or questions answered. Some of them will be live, and some of them will be via typing them out. But again, if you have questions that you've been unable to get answered, come to that session and hopefully we can get those taken care of for you. And thank you once again for joining. We really appreciate the fact that you all come to these Academy sessions and trust in us to give you really great content to help you inside of your platform as well. So with that, thank you. And thank you, Dan, for giving us a really great session that was needed and had been asked for. So now it would be nice to be able to reference that for other people. So thank you. And Tara, thank you as well for being on to answer questions. And we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.